Hello everybody, Dokkan DVZ assets here. Oh, I am so excited, ladies and gentlemen. We just had the drop for the brand new INT LR fused ZAMASU's animations. And I have to say, I am really excited to take a look at these. Not only have I already watched these a few times and developed a few opinions already, but of course we're going to take a deep dive into it when you do the slow-mo in a minute here. But fused Zamasu, not Goop Zamasu, right, the corrupted one. This version of him is actually my favorite design for Zamasu, and one of my favorite designs, I think, in DBS in general. So I was really excited for this LR, and I gotta say, despite there's a couple of things that I think that maybe they could have done, I think that they did him justice. Funny. So let's go ahead and watch through his animations at 1x speed normally first. And then we will take a look at them in the slow-mo. By the way, definitely recommend listening to this. Of course, I'll leave a link in the description because the OST and the voice acting is fantastic. Zamasu's VA is so good, and the OST easily complements that. Look at the aura! Oh, so good! It's so good, dude. They absolutely killed it with the aura. The explosion effects, I gotta say, in this animation look really nice. Really like how they look in this. I think that they nailed like every single one. Also, he has a counter animation, which is pretty cool. I believe it only procs if there is a Potara ally on the same rotation, which is kind of interesting. I suppose if you are going to be running him on most of the teams you're running him on, you're probably going to be running him with some kind of regular Zamasu or Goku Black friend, so kind of makes sense that that's what you need for him. One thing that I will say that is pretty interesting about these animations, and I suppose this is just more akin to how this fight went down in DBS, but he does stand there quite a bit. Like, Zamasu himself is not very... I don't want to say he's not animated, because obviously he has a bunch of animation to him, but he doesn't have a lot of variation in poses. But again, that's more so due to the fight and how it went down. He is standing there really for most of the animations, and honestly the key blasts and stuff like that are really carrying here. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the intro. By the way, this video is uploaded so soon that we don't have the 720p quality yet. So unfortunately, just gonna have to bear through it in 480. But we start off here with both of the boys. This is a pretty cool because even though these are smaller sprites, these do still look very high quality. And I like that both of them are sort of tilting their head towards each other. And you can see that both of their legs as well are sort of like one of their legs is longer towards each other, because obviously the other one is sort of like bent back a little bit. Very neat attention to detail. So we have the Potara glowing and the focus on the Potara. Goku Black is very dark here, which is interesting, and so is Zamasu. Like, they look kind of washed out a little bit, but obviously that is sort of the color palette of this scene, because obviously it's the desolate wasteland in the future, right? They slide together. I do kind of wish, I will say, with this, I kind of wish there was a little bit more of them flying towards each other rather than it going from Zamasu cutting to just them with motion lines, right? Like, I wish they had a shot of Zamasu's body turning and then his midsection being pulled forward and being pulled off screen, and then the same thing for Rose, right, where his body turns and then is pulled forward right from the midsection, and then they cut to this where they have them smash together and then spin around. I think that would have added a lot more to this, but this is definitely not bad, and you don't even really think about that when you're watching this. This looks really good, though, obviously with both of them on screen, and again, even though these assets are obviously a little bit smaller, I think they still look really nice. They definitely did a good job here. I really like the way that these look. They don't look low quality to my eyes at all, which is nice. The glow is very cool as well. The nice detail about this as well is that obviously when they actually merge, it's not as much the case, but you can still see their two bodies, right? Relatively speaking, it's a little bit more weird when you're looking at it in this like 2D form, but you can see, right? Even with them fully covered in white light, right? You can see that that's Zamasu and that's Goku Black. They do a good job representing them both as they're still spinning in the light, which is pretty cool too. We have the light engulf this city here. Oh, this is such a nice shot. So this is really cool. How he sort of like reforms here. I just want to make sure that this is taken note of, right? Glowing a little bit as the light sort of fades out, going into the actual silhouette of Zamasu proper, right? And then his arms come down, right? The motion is so good, by the way. Like, I think that these frames, there doesn't need to be any more frames in between this, right? There is a little flick right there, but in motion, it looks perfect. I really, really like the way that this looks. I think they nailed it. As well as you can see sort of the color moving around in the actual silhouette of Zamasu there. You can see the oranges and reds moving around in there. Very, very cool. We have it sort of break off into Stardust there, which is a nice little effect. Very interesting, by the way, that they make him a little bit darker here first. I guess it's supposed to be like a, ooh, you know. Also, by the way, challenger incoming. But yeah, I really, really like this shot a lot. Funny enough, this might be my favorite shot in the whole thing, low-key, just because I think the way that this looks just looks so cool. Zamasu's expression is perfect. And again, bro, the aura is just so nice looking. I love the multicolor motif that they go with for this. It looks very, very nice indeed. Zamasu darkens a little bit to get to that silhouette. By the way, I love when they darken him. It allows them to emphasize on the Potara a lot more, which is really, really cool. And a very nice sort of like, ooh, you know, that it's like, it emphasizes the fact that, hey, they're fused with the Potara, they mean business, right? And this is also a very nice shot too, where we have these different like cuts to the different sections of Zamasu, right, to sort of be like, oh boy, he coming. And obviously the rainbow colors in the background to represent his aura as well is really, really nice. I like when they do shots like this in anime, where it's sort of like a like showing different parts of their body, right, to sort of like emphasize like, oh wow, they're about to come on the screen. This is definitely an underrated shot, by the way, with Zamasu's face there in the corner. It's only there for just but a moment, so it is really hard to tell. But yeah, this looks so good, dude. The aura looks amazing. It doesn't even look like Dokkan assets, which is so impressive to me. It looks like someone gave this like a 3D, not a 3D effect, but like effect in like Sony Vegas or After Effects or something like that. And it turned out really, really nice. The halo glowing as well is very nice too. The mouth flaps, by the way, I just want to point out, look great. I don't know why they feel a lot more natural than other active skills that I've seen, even though they are quite literally just opening it, right, and closing it, but I feel like they feel more natural when he's talking too. This is very nice here, where we have him look down and finally give his devious little smile on the screen. But yeah, I definitely like this little look down. I might actually make this the thumbnail. I was originally going to make this the thumbnail, but I don't know. I kind of like it with him looking up there. This is a very cool shot. Obviously, I really like the key in the background too. And you can even see his hair moving a little bit in the background as well. Or in the foreground rather, which is very cool too. Interesting that, yeah, I believe, okay, yeah, I was going to say he talks there. Yeah, the mouth flaps also look really good here too. Very, very nice looking intro. It's so good, dude. And one thing that I did want to share with you, by the way, real quick, shout out to the boy Markel. This is very cool. I just wanted to point this out to you. I'll leave this tweet linked in the description. But this is a awesome little note here, where look how much the animations have improved comparatively, right? Between these two animations, right? Obviously, the original being from 2019 and this one being from 2022. You can see the improvement in this. And it's crazy to think, too, because this is obviously, like, just an unfeatured LR, right? So it's usually, right, like the Dokkan Fest LRs are the LRs that have like a ton of work put into them, and the unfeatured LRs do still have a lot of great stuff usually and a lot of work put into them, but those are usually the big boys. But this is like a crazy difference. So I just wanted to just share with you this tweet just because I thought this was cool and definitely something worth noting in an analysis video about their animations, right? Showing how far they've come with literally the same animation, right? Super cool. You can definitely tell that Dokkan is on the rise for animations. So this is a very nice shot here, first of all, where we have ZAMASU looking down at the enemy. I really like that. Unfortunately, because of how the sprites are, there's not really like a good sprite to represent them standing on the ground, because this pose for Vegeta still looks a little bit awkward for sure. We do have this cut to ZAMASU's face here. This is a pretty iconic shot from this saga, right, where you have ZAMASU's expression like this, and then the camera sort of fades away from his face, or I guess pulls out from his face, rather, I should say. It's an interesting expression, but I think Dokkan does definitely capture it well. Obviously, it's when he's super focused and getting a little angry, right? It is also interesting that for this, they decided to use the perspective and how much of ZAMASU's body is showing for the change in hand position, right? So you can see that he kind of has his fists clenched in front of him here. And then when they zoom out, you can see that he's about to raise his hand to launch the attack. Very interesting. As well, the Halo also doesn't have the almost like crosshairs on the side of it, right? It is just a circle, and you only see this for but a moment, so I think that it's fine. And as far as I remember, I'm pretty sure this is anime accurate and very, very cool, not to mention very well animated, obviously with the ring expanding, so then of course the various different light beams can come out of it, right? And it sort of explodes and dissipates as well a little bit here, right, towards the edges as these attacks are firing off. I think that is a very cool effect to emphasize, right, these beams coming down. And we haven't even talked about the beams yet, right? So another interesting thing too, by the way, here is that because it is so far away, it's a lot harder to tell, but ZAMASU does in a moment bring his hand upward, right, to point towards the heavens to summon his beams of light, right? Normally, I would say that I would want more frames in between all of those different hand positions, but honestly, in full motion, and especially with how quick it is on the screen, you literally can't even tell that there's a jump, right? I just played that clip for you, right? Watch this. Bam. Even with our keenly trained eyes, especially if you've been watching this series for a while and you've seen all my little critiques and whatnot on these animations, it is really hard to tell that it's sort of, you know, cut up like that in terms of his movement of the poses, which is very good, right? If they are going to quote-unquote cut corners, I don't think this is as much of cutting corners, but if they're not going to do the full movement of the animation, this is the way to do it. Make it look good, right? And this most certainly does look good. Alright, so this is one thing that I will say is a little bit bothersome to me. Maybe this is just nitpicking, but I kind of wish that the red orbs where the key's about to spawn weren't just like on top of the ring. I kind of wish maybe they were like all inside the circle and maybe some over his head as well, because it is a little bit weird that he's pointing upward and then they're appearing behind him, right? But nonetheless, these do look really cool. Maybe it's just because this is only there for literally a second, right? Because obviously the ring expands and then we have these shoot towards the ground. I will say when these are flying forward, these look really good. I love the way that they did this, and as well, this is some super cool perspective here, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, we have some smaller ones in the back and some bigger ones towards the foreground, but we actually have one sort of pass by the camera here, super big. I really, really like that effect because this sort of emphasizes the angle that you're taking a look at ZAMASU from. Very, very cool stuff. So these look really great firing down. I will say, once they make impact with the enemy, I feel like they do look a little bit janky. It's kind of hard to tell when we're just looking at this frame by frame, right? If we take a look at this in full motion, I definitely think that when ZAMASU is on the screen, they look a lot better launched. But then when they're actually hitting the enemy, I don't know, it kind of looks a little bit janky to me. But again, Maybe that's just me nitpicking. I don't think it looks bad by any stretch of the animation, the imagination, right? But it definitely just looks like the same PNG being like thrown over and over, which I mean, I guess it kind of is. By the way, the smoke effect also looks really, really nice here. I like how when it actually hits the enemy, we have this very nice sort of plume that not only grows as it's being, you know, smacked up with the different key blasts there, but it also has the key blasts sort of colliding with it and spraying off of the smoke there, right? I think that that is a really, really cool effect and gives this animation even more life, for sure. After the smoke, we have Vegeta fly towards the ground there with the dust clouds. Kind of lame, but again, that's the sprite more so, not necessarily like the animation. I guess they could have made a better smoke plume for that, but I mean, it's not that big of a deal. This shot is really, really cool. Look how sinister ZAMASU looks here, by the way. They did a fantastic job capturing his emotions and his character with these animations. Really, really well. So we have ZAMASU throw his arms to the side. I love, by the way, the very small, minimal animation that they do. Let me see if I can get it in the frame by frame, right? We zoom out a little bit, and ZAMASU moves his arms just ever so slightly above his face, and then moves them to the side, right? That is such a cool attention to detail in the way of just like more natural movement, right? Obviously, when you move your arms like this, I think that most people wouldn't move from this position, right? Skip over this and then go immediately to this, right? To just whipping your arms out. There's usually a little bit of build-up if you're going to do that, or at least for ZAMASU's case, of course, with how dramatic he is, right? That makes sense for his character. I think that's just those little touches of detail that really make animations like this for me. So we have ZAMASU throw his arms to the side here. Again, this is normally a shot where I would be like, oh, put more frames in it. Not this time, ladies and gentlemen. Again, if we take a look at this in normal speed, you really can't tell, and it looks super fluid when he throws his arms out to the side like that, right? That looks exactly how it should, right? Super proper, super nice. The exact points where the movement needs to be emphasized, paused, and the poses need to snap are perfect to make this animation look fluid. Moving on, we obviously have the flash to the card art, which looks really good, by the way. Definitely love that card art for sure. We have the purple appear in the sky, which is really cool. This shot is just, ooh. This shot is so powerful right here. So cool looking. Obviously, we have the little red dots form in the sky, which, of course, will then be the key spheres coming at you. So this is interesting. I can't remember the last time we've had, like, multiple key blasts where you were sort of getting hit with them in first person like this, but I think they do a good job, right? We have them all in the sky. We have these couple that are going to fly first, expand, right? And not only do they sort of come more into frame, but obviously they grow a little bit bigger and actually have some shape as they fly towards the screen as well. They're sort of sporadic, wild, you know, as they dart forward, right? I will say it is a little bit weird because the first couple ones look like they're actually coming from this like cluster of key, but now it almost kind of looks like it's more represented, like the little balls are representing these things coming forward. Maybe it's just because each individual one doesn't have like a start point, right? Like they're not actually coming directly from these individual key blasts. They're just sort of coming from the general area that these little dots are. Again, in full motion, it doesn't really look that bad, and it's probably something that you wouldn't notice, you know, if you weren't like paying super attention to it, excuse me, right? You can kind of tell, right, that they just sort of come from that area. That's probably my biggest gripe with this animation so far, which honestly, that being the only thing so far is a very telling sign about how good these animations are for sure. We have the various key blasts fly down into the ground here as they sort of spike into the ground. I will say my only thing with these, right, is that I like the way that they hit the ground, even again in full motion. I think the way that they sort of stab into the ground looks very nice. Sorry, I don't mean to keep making this full screen. Sometimes when you pause and play real quick on YouTube, it makes it full screen. It's kind of annoying. But anyway, right, we have the Ki Blast hit the ground, which I think look really good. The only thing is, I kind of wish there was a little bit more shading on these. I feel like they look a little bit out of place on the background, right? Like, especially like this, right? Maybe it doesn't help that this one was supposed to be overlapped under this one, but it kind of feels like that they're not in the ground and they're just pasted on top of the image, right? Like, it almost feels like they didn't finish the Photoshop job that they were gonna do for these, looking like that they were impaled in the ground a little bit better. Even with these smaller ones here, right? It kind of just looks like they're pasted on top. Again, it doesn't look terrible, and I don't think it ruins the animation by any means, but it definitely felt a little bit out of place to me the first time I watched it, and I still think that. Now, thankfully it isn't on the screen for too long, because Vegeta literally explodes, and the explosion effect looks really, really good. From the initial explosion here, with the red light sort of engulfing the screen and the rocks flying about, right, to, you know, sort of represent the ground breaking apart and flying around Vegeta here. Looks really, really nice. Obviously, too, with everything flowing in one direction, it makes it feel a lot more natural and like, you know, the character's actually going to be flung back with this explosion, right? Looks really, really cool. And then we have the actual explosion that you can see from far away. I love these beams of light that are up towards the sky here. The smoke also looks very, very nice too. The explosion effect also emphasizes this really well. And the dust cloud is also very well animated and feels very, very natural to me as well too. I love the effect of the ki dissipating off of the explosion here in this ring as well, and the dust cloud that goes over the city too, and the dust, not just the little like air ring from the explosion, but then we have the ring of dust here, right, that flies off. And what's really cool is that this flies towards the camera and then covers up the end of the animation. That's a very nice way to do a transition for sure. Really, really like this animation. It is super cool. So let's go ahead and move on to his counterattack. We'll just skip ahead through Trunks' counterattack and go to the part where ZAMASU actually counters the enemy, right? So we have the cut-in, and I guess we'll look at the part. Well, no, actually, that's just because Trunks' animation looks like that with ZAMASU standing there. So I will say this is probably the weakest animation of the bunch. It is a counter animation, so obviously it's not going to be as insane as the full Ki super attacks, because of course it's a couple seconds of animation. By the way, it's interesting that you can see for the first couple frames here, you can see Trunks' aura obviously clashing with ZAMASU, but then it disappears, which is kind of interesting as he catches it. His purple lightning is also very interesting too. It's cool that they have the Ki as well emphasized on his hand as well. I will say, I am not the biggest fan. I like this part, and there is a little bit of emphasis too when the punch lands. You can see that there's actually a little bit of lean on his hand, like he's actually catching it, like a little bit of recoil. I'm not really a fan of this instant fade to white and then re-fade in, right? Or more like cut to white and then fade in, right? Not really a fan of that transition. I think it is a little bit jarring. And then obviously this is like the angle of ZAMASU catching the enemy's punch. I will say, when I watched this animation for the first couple times, I was about to say, I always thought the animation has not been out long enough for me to be able to say that. When I was watching this for the first couple times, I think that ZAMASU's face looks a little bit weird here. Maybe it's just me personally, but I think that he just looks a little bit off there for sure. We do have a very nice looking though catch of the punch. It's interesting how as well too, for the previous animation they show the enemy sprite's hand being caught, right? Because we could clearly see Trunks's aura there before, but the sprite sort of gets pushed away, right? Obviously that's what this purple is supposed to be, and the like clear effect is supposed to be the air shooting away the enemy too. Which is just interesting. These little lights, by the way, that are like dangling around Zamasu are also very interesting. Ah, I see why I don't like this counter animation as much, by the way. They did the funny fade where instead of animating the movement fully, they animate a couple parts of it, and then what they do is they fade in between different poses to sort of represent the full movement of him here. Not the worst looking offender that I've ever seen. That looked a lot worse. Let's watch that in full speed to see if we can see that. But yeah, when his hand is moving forward, it looks so weird. You can see it obviously fades in here. I do like how this turns purple though. Maybe a sign of what's to come. But a very cool like lighting effect here. Like if it was more like this, where it was like slow motion trying to look, it would look a lot more cool. But this is just lazy animation. In my opinion. Obviously, I think that about all the fading in the Dokkan essay. So let's see, right? You can't really tell it as much there, for sure. It's a lot harder to catch. You can kind of notice it, but it transitions so quickly that you're probably not going to. However, with the hand, you can really see it there. I guess in full motion, it looks a little bit better, right? Because it kind of almost gives off that slow motion effect, but it's not in slow motion. It just feels a little bit weird to me, as all. Again, I am nitpicking, because again, that's what we do here. Moving on, though, from the Ki Blast flying forward, you can see that we have Zamasu now with the big boy Halo behind him. It's interesting that in the beginning of the animation, he didn't have this in, where was it here? This section, right? But obviously now he has it, which is interesting. I don't know if that's necessarily a continuity error. It might be supposed to be like that. I'm not sure off the top of my head. But the blast away to the enemy looks pretty cool. I like the way that this Ki Blast looks. I like the shape of it as well. It also looks like he is actually flowing out from his hand rather than just being like a circle or a beam. Like that a lot. So very nice as well on that too. Some very nice effects on the sort of like dust and debris and just like key light sort of sparkling off of that. And it's cool too because they do a good job of lighting Zamasu here as well. It definitely looks like that the light is reflecting off of his body. And I even notice actually, I don't think his hair is moving here. And I mean, it's mostly blocked by the halo, so you probably wouldn't see it. But his cloak actually does move a little bit, which is cool. I don't know if it's the lighting on the shoulder pads that's making them look like they're moving, but it's definitely moving this part here too. And also the pants a little bit as well. Very nice attention to detail by Bandai there for sure. The sprite looks so stupid here, moving back and forth. But again, this is not the fault of this animation. This is the stinky sprites being the stinky sprites. It is interesting that the way that they choose to represent this as well is that they have like this little bit of pink light here on the bottom, like the enemy's getting hit with the key. I almost kind of would have preferred it if it didn't look there, because I feel like it looks a little bit like cheap, I suppose. Honestly, like the enemy's already flying away. They already got blasted, bro. Like I would have just believed you if there wouldn't have been anything there, but I suppose it does help keeping the continuity a little bit for sure. Alright, and then we have the enemy disappear into the sky. Oh, man. This is so good, dude. Alright, so we're moving into his 18-key super attack. First of all, I cannot tell you or remember the last time that a Dokkan animation had something like this in it, where you have a little bit of the shadow over the eye. The Jotaro Kujo, if you will. This looks really, really nice. I definitely like the sort of introduction of this. This tripped me up a little bit, I'm not going to lie, the first time I saw it. Let me also refresh the page real quick, just because I think we probably have the 720p version of the video now at our disposal. No? Okay, I guess it's still rendering. Regardless, I really like this introduction here. We have a very nice asset of Zamasu's hand forming the infamous sunball technique. Very, very cool that all that little dust sort of, you know, congregates into the little ball in his hand. I really like the effect of that. Very, very cool. Also, something to note is that Zamasu's hand, obviously, it moves up and then his fingers move a little bit. But even after his fingers are done moving, there's still a little bit of movement on the hand, it seems. Just a tiny bit. Like, it's so slight that it's hard to see. But again, it makes this animation feel so much more lifelike, because it's not just like a, you know, like stable character, a static character. That's the word I was looking for. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired. It makes it feel a lot more dynamic, for sure. Okay, so we have Zamasu standing there getting ready to fire the beam of sun in the distance. Oh, this shot is so good looking, dude. Oh, this is a very, very nice looking shot here. It is cool as well that they actually keep the detail of the little circle within the sun, because obviously that's how the attack will look when it's really big. Some very nice lighting effects as well coming off of the ball here too. I like the little bit of a change in, not the really a change in expression, but the change in the angle that you're seeing this. Both I feel like captures Zamasu's expressions quite well. And I think they both look very sinister. I like the movement of the arm. Again, this is another section, and I know I sound like a broken record at this point. I'm sorry. But where the arm sort of snaps up a little bit, like that. Normally I would be like, put more frames in that bad boy. But again, in full animation, it looks good. It looks like he's just raising his arm to the sky very, very quickly, which is what we want to see, right? Again, the parts where they're not adding in between frames for the animation, they're animating in a way that it makes it look fluid, which is awesome. It seems like they're learning, for sure. So we have the card art pop up here on the screen. This is really early in the animation. This is like one of the earliest showings of card art that I feel like I've seen in a while in an animation. Okay, so we have some really cool key effects. This is very reminiscent of the intro animation with how the key effects look on Zamasu here. I will say, excuse me, this is the part of the animation that I am probably the least fan of, besides the counter animation. The like movement and what he does is fine, but I will say this is the only time that I did actually notice in my first couple of viewings of a little bit of jarring changes in poses from Zamasu here. Like, usually my eye is pretty well trained to pick up on those, and the fact that I didn't pick up on the couple of ones that I pointed out earlier where I sounded like a broken record is pretty impressive. But here I certainly noticed it, right? This pretty jarring change from his arm moving forward to his feet sort of coming out a little bit more, right? And then as we go forward a little bit, this is a very drastic change. This one's a lot more noticeable, right? Definitely not enough frames in between these two. I feel like both of those parts of this, right, especially this one, could have been an opportunity for some great rotoscoping. It is a little bit unfortunate considering the rest of these animations are so good and so fluid. It's interesting to me why they wouldn't just animate it the same way they've been animating it the whole time, right? But instead they just decide to cut it there. Very weird to me that they cut corners right there, but Bandai will be Bandai, I suppose, or more like Akatsuki, right? This is the one time where this actually makes sense, because obviously he's launching the Ki Blast forward. It is interesting that the shading changes that quickly, right? Because obviously this is where the Ki Blast is behind him, so obviously you're not really going to see the light, and of course there are shadows on his back. Where here, now obviously the Ki Blast is in front of him, and so he has a little bit of an orange tone over his facial features. By the way, this color palette and this art style, going from this and then to this looks a lot like Buchigiri Match. I have to say that every time I see it in one of these videos. But anyway, the actual key on him looks good, and I do quite like the way that they do this perspective here, where obviously he's like in the full screen, right? But then of course his body gets a little bit smaller and his hand is super big, but again it's sort of almost like a fisheye view, or it's just, you know, you're super close to his hand when you're viewing these. I quite like that, actually. So then we have the sun fly forward. It is cool that they bothered to animate this correctly. This is actually how this Ki Blast looked when it fired off in the anime, so I'm glad that they kept that anime accurate. This looks very nice as well. The Ki Blast, especially here, this is definitely the best looking section of how this Ki Blast looks in all these animations, bar none. It looks very, very nice and very akin to the anime. Very dynamic as well. You can really feel like the intensity of how much ki there is packed into this thing. Very cool as well. Oh, this is a very nice shot too. Very cool as well. Not only that you see this little like remnants of a building get turned to dust. That is a very, very cool little detail that they absolutely did not have to include, right? This definitely could have just hit the enemy sprite, but it's so cool that they bothered to include it. I feel like that's something else that a lot of people probably won't notice, but I'm going to point it out because I want you to appreciate it. But this is cool too. As it hits the ground, you can see that the smoke is sort of flying away, like in the direction as it is coming out from under, right, the actual key blast as it's making a crater in the earth. Then of course we have these smoke effects sort of fly by the screen too. Very, very nice attention to detail with all those little minute things, right? So this is a pretty cool shot. Obviously ZAMASU still has his fingers forward from launching the key blast. A very nice as well. Little bit of rotoscoping here, but a very cool angle, right? Because the thing is, if we start here, right, look how little, or not little, but it's going to be a little bit difficult to explain this perspective, what I mean, right? It's a very vertical look on ZAMASU's fingers, right? But as you zoom in here a little bit, not only is it just zooming into his hand, but it feels like his fingers are almost just a tiny bit moving to the side a little bit, just again as that camera sort of pulls in. Very, very cool. We also have this very nice zoom in of the face, and this is honestly a decent way to do a cut here, right? I would much rather them do a cut like this than just have it be super jarring, right? Where when it zooms into his face, then it cuts back out to his hand, right? That feels a lot more natural to me than a rapid cut, right? Now, what is interesting about this is that they also do trick your eyes a little bit. I don't know why they didn't just have it like this and then have the camera move around his hand rather than deciding to snap in between these two shots here. Maybe they just figure because your eyes are focused on the fingers, you won't notice the fact that the angle changes so drastically in a nanosecond, right? I think there's a specific term for this in animation or in like art where it's sort of like, even though something is weird in the piece or in the background, you're not going to notice it because your attention is elsewhere, and so the artist uses that to their animation, to their advantage rather, excuse me. I feel like that is definitely what's at play here. It is also very jarring going from this nice high quality sprite of ZAMASU's hand, or asset rather, to an actual Dokkan sprite here. Again, it doesn't look terrible, but it is very weird looking at it go from this with these very thin black lines to these very harsh black lines. I do want to see, how does this look in actual full motion here? I want to see how the sun looks so good. Yeah, so, okay, so it definitely doesn't look as bad for sure. It definitely looks a lot more fluid when you're looking at it like that. Even what I was going to say next, which was the fact that they snap in between these two poses for ZAMASU. I kind of didn't like that for sure. But, again, in the full range of motion here, it actually looks pretty good. Definitely looks very nice in the way that they wrap it around. There could definitely be a couple of extra frames in between some of that, because when you do watch it in full-time speed, there is like kind of a little bit where it feels like it jumps just a hair. It's negligible at best. So again, it's really just me nitpicking. I think it looks pretty good. See, that's the thing, right? When animations are good in Dokkan, animations are good. It's hard to find something negative to say. And I don't, like, go out of my way to try and find something negative to say, of course. But I'm always going to nitpick because that's just what I like to do. You know, I like to make sure that I'm getting every little detail about these animations because there's so much to unpack that you always miss, right? Alright, so obviously we have this shot where we sort of zoom out to get a better scale of this key blast here, with the key still moving very, very nicely with the sun here, right? This is also very cool too, with the sort of white light expanding here. Very interesting that it just sort of like pulses and gets bigger, right? There isn't really like animation of it snaking out and growing. I would have to look back and see how this looked in the anime, but it is a little bit weird that it's just like whoa, 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 you know, very interesting. But I do like how it looks in the end where it sort of scatters about very sporadically. That is pretty cool. Obviously, we have the blast finally properly collide with the ground here and actually explode on contact with the ground with all these rocks and smoke flying here, which does look pretty cool. I think I like the 12 key explosion a little bit more, but I prefer mushroom clouds, I think, more than just like a bush cloud, I guess. Alright, so finally we are on to the active skill. The active skill is pretty cool. We have this very interesting angle where we're sort of looking down, or we're looking up, rather. Zamasu is looking down, excuse me. Zamasu brings his hands forward. Please, give me money. And then, of course, bringing them up to his sides once more. Again, this is one shot where normally I would be like more frames, but again, in full motion, right? I think that this looks absolutely fine. I think that it definitely looks very fluid, right? Oh, I can't wait to get to the bird. I can't wait to get to the bird. I'm so happy they included this in here. Okay, so Zamasu pulls back a little bit. We have this flash, which actually I think this is a very nice use of a flash here. Normally, I'm not too big of a fan when they do this in different, like, Dokkan animations and stuff like that. But I think it works literally perfectly for what they're trying to emphasize here, which is the spawn, right, of the purple aura behind Zamasu. These little embers here in the front look really cool, too. The key looks incredible, by the way. The animation on that is, oh, beautiful. Very, very nice looking for sure. The key dissipates a little bit around Zamasu and begins to form the bird, which is super, super cool looking. In actual like movement, it looks even better than how it does here. I know it looks a little bit like, ooh, yikes, in this section especially. But in full motion, again, it looks good. And the other thing is it's a little bit different this time because I think that is anime accurate. I do remember in this scene where this actually happened, I think that the bird actually did move like that in the actual animation. So it is anime accurate to my knowledge. Again, I haven't seen this scene in a little bit. I do like the smoke that comes out as well from the little like plume, the little plume of smoke from that. It's also cool too that they include a little halo around the bird, which again is also anime accurate. And there's a little halo still behind Zamasu. It's cool that they even bothered to include that detail because obviously it's so small you might not even notice it, but it's there. You can see that little white bit behind him. So this is a really sick angle, obviously looking from sort of up and behind the bird here, looking down at Zamasu and the enemy. By the way, a very nice attention to detail too, that the destroyed city is on fire, because obviously by this point, not only just in the Dokkan fight, but also in the continuity of these animations, the ground would be on fire because, you know, this would be like after the 18 key and just also after Zamasu is wreaking havoc everywhere. So very, very cool. I like the embers as well from the flames too there. It's cool that this isn't just like a PNG background. You can see that the flames are animated and glowing. They're not really moving a little bit, but again, it's so far that like if you were looking at this from this far, this is probably how it would just look, this like glowing embers in the sky. Very, very cool. I like this a lot. There's even a little bit of movement. I didn't even notice that on the enemy sprite moves around a little bit, not just obviously the aura of Goku, but Zamasu and the purple bird move just a tiny bit, which again makes this feel a lot more alive. I like that a lot. Okay, so we have a very cool cut to the eye of Zamasu. I will say I like this shot. I wish they did something else just besides cut in between this. I don't really know what I would have liked specifically for this. This is one time where I don't really have a clue what I would have wanted in between, but I know I want something. Regardless though, this shot is really cool. I like this eye shot. We have a couple of shots like this in Dokkan, but I feel like we never get enough of them. They are really cool. This is also very nice with obviously Zamasu squinting his eye a little bit in anger. A very cool, by the way, shot coming up here. Again, we have another cut, which I don't mind this one as much. This one feels a little bit more natural. This is super cool because obviously this is a pretty iconic shot from the anime where Zamasu's face sort of moves past the camera as he's about to fire the key from the big bird, right? I think they got his expression pretty good. I will say this was the one section of this that I felt like his facial features looked a little bit off. It's definitely not like, oh no, that looks terrible type of thing, of course. But it definitely feels a little bit off to me anyway. Again, I'll have to rewatch the scene just to make sure. But like here, right, this feels a little bit weird. Though, I suppose it does quite capture Zamasu's very crazed look by this point. The only other thing about this section specifically that really bothered me is this change. Not only is it a clear asset upgrade really quickly, but also, obviously, there is a big change in the pose here. And of course, taking up much more of the screen is also a little bit jarring right there. That's definitely noticeable even in the full-time speed for sure. We have a little bit of a pan away from the camera and a zoom in to the bird in the sky with the lightning firing down from the bird. This looks pretty cool. I wish that these lightning effects were a little bit more interesting. It's not that they don't look good. I just like, they don't look as cool as the little like darts that Zamasu was firing off earlier. In my opinion as well. These explosion effects are pretty lackluster in my opinion. They're like the basic Dokkan explosions, right, with just a little like plume of fire basically exploding around, right? I definitely think that they could have done something a little bit more impactful for this. I understand that it's these different bolts of electricity hitting the ground, but this is supposed to be like a crazy scene, right? These are these super powerful, godly energy, you know, beams of light smashing into the ground and smashing into our heroes, right? I feel like it should look a little bit more climactic than just these, like, cheese curds on the ground, basically, right? We have a fade into white and then a cutaway from white. Again, we have these sort of stinky looking explosions crack into the ground, right, with the enemy sprite sort of flying away. This is really cool though. This one hits the ground. I almost would have preferred if they didn't include the little explosion here because it blocks away from these nice looking pillars of lava in the background, which I would much prefer to be seeing. So it's a little bit of a shame that like for this one that appears here, it's just kind of blocked by all the rocks. Like the rocks I don't mind as much because it feels more in tune with the animation, but the little explosion effect is like, bro, get out of the way, I'm trying to see the show. Thankfully it isn't there for too long because obviously we have the lava explode behind, which looks really good with all of these rocks too. As well, we also have the dust spray up from the ground, and this is a pretty cool transition. I will say it is a little bit ruined by the black cut there. I really wish that this quick wasn't there. I think that's something there that happens with every single KO screen. I don't think that's really avoidable. But it would definitely feel a lot more fluid and like a full continuous animation if it didn't have that cut of black. However, I definitely like the way that they do this transition, right? Where obviously this is on the ground looking at the lava, but then of course now we're looking back up in the sky as the dust settles to see Zamasu standing there with those big old legs. Obviously that's a little bit of perspective playing tricks on your mind, but yeah, very, very cool. I like the flame embers as well, sort of emanating up from the ground. And Zamasu looks really good here. I would love to see this asset. I mean, we will when the data download happens, but without the KO screen in the way too. I think it'll look a little bit more natural as well that way. But yeah, that is LR Fused Zamasu's animations. Overall, I am a really big fan of these. I think that these look really, really nice. There is a ton of really cool stuff that these animations do. There's a lot of really nice movement in these, a lot of super cool shots and angles as well. Lots of nice key effects, some very nice explosion effects as well. I think that they did the boy Zamasu justice with these animations for sure. These look really, really nice, and especially being a big fan of this form for sure, I'm really happy that they made these animations look so good. If I may be so bold, I think these animations look way better than Frieza's animations. Like by a landslide. It's not even close how much better these look than Frieza. which is very nice to see. It's interesting because it almost makes me think that maybe they rushed Frieza a little bit, and also maybe it's because Zamasu is for the Tanabata celebration, which is a little bit more of a bigger deal than obviously just a random celebration. But this guy's animations look fantastic. I am very happy when I have a lot more positive things to say about an animation than negative things, because that means that the animations are overall really good. So, let me know what you think in the comments section below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this one. I think most people are going to be enjoying these. That's what I've seen so far from the general reactions to things. But, other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Obviously, I do these videos whenever we get a new unit animation drop, so keep an eye out for the next one, whatever that may be. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Dokkan, it's out. Peace.